Love is the oldest story ever told. For centuries, it's been the muse of poets, the subject of sonnets, and the driving force of empires. It's often portrayed as a grand sweeping epic that gives life all its meaning. But rather recently, something has happened to this story. The epic has been sliced into snippets, and the sonnet has been reduced to a caption. The force of nature is now a product to be curated, optimized, and presented for public consumption. We're one of the first generations to have our most intimate moments constantly measured against a global highlight reel. We're living in a grand social experiment on the human heart, and a lot of us are walking away from the lab feeling like we didn't have any say in the matter. If you've ever looked at your relationship, or in my case lack thereof one, and felt a pang of fraudulence, if you've ever wondered why something that's supposed to feel so real can often feel so performative, this doesn't necessarily mean you're broken. However, it may be that the signs that you're receiving are. I believe that today we are looking at a systemic cultural sickness affecting how we form one of life's most important bonds. The symptom is this pervasive feeling that love is fake, and the diagnosis is that we've conflated connection with validation. We've mistaken intimacy for intensity, and we're seeking completion from another person instead of offering companionship as a whole person. Our modern concept of love is, in my opinion, been hijacked. The feeling of fakeness isn't a personal failure. It's a logical response to an environment that has re-engineered the rules of connection. There are three primary engines creating that environment. We should first begin with the most prevalent architect of our social reality, social media. To fully understand social media's power, we need to go beyond the idea of just accepting it as something to just show off on. We need to see it as a behavioral conditioning platform that actively rewards performance and punishes authenticity. On social media, every action is a data point, a like, a comment, or a share. These are quantifiable units of social validation. When we post about our relationships, we are, whether we admit it or not, engaging in a form of social accounting. We're making a public deposit into the bank of our relationship and watching the social interest occur. The problem is, the currency isn't intimacy, it's just perceived intimacy. If you even begin to think about the process of making a social media post in the first place, you'll start to see the patterns. The perfect photo isn't chosen because it captures a genuine moment of joy, but because it best communicates the idea of joy to an external audience. The caption is crafted not as a simple love note, but as a piece of copyright designed to elicit a specific reaction, sometimes an awe, or couples goals, or so luckies, or whatever the heck you guys put in the comments. The relationship itself becomes a brand, and the two people in it become the chief marketing officers. This creates a terrifying cognitive dissonance. You are simultaneously living a relationship and marketing it. You're the experience and the publicist for the experience. And is that any wonder why it starts to feel fake? This is not to say that this is all couples on social media, but I can assure you it's the large majority. Historically, love blossomed in private spaces. The first awkward date, the first kiss, the first fight. These were sacred because they were contained. They belonged only to the people that were involved, and this privacy created a safe container for vulnerability and for making mistakes, and for being what we would often call unpolished. Social media has demolished this container. By making our relationships public property, we invite scrutiny and judgment of hundreds and even thousands of spectators, most of which we have no clue. This constant visibility forces us into a state of perpetual self-awareness. We don't just ask, does this feel good to us? We now ask, how will this look to them? A quiet stay-at-home date night feels less valid than a very fancy postable dinner. A private heartfelt gift can feel less significant than a flashy Instagrammable one. We begin to outsource our validation of our own happiness. If the moment isn't witnessed or approved by others, did it really happen? This is how the performance becomes more real than reality. Comparison is a natural part of all of our lives. There will be points in time in life where you'll want what other people have. However, it's not meant to be some 24/7 feed of the most successful moments of thousands of other people's lives. This is where things start to get dangerous. It creates a brutal internal psychological war. We start comparing our behind-the-scenes silent treatments, or our financial stresses, or the Sundays that are often boring to us against someone else's premiering highlight reel of them going out on a cruise, or reaching the Bahamas, or touching some crazy grass that probably doesn't exist. Neuroscientists have found that this kind of constant social comparison activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. So if we stop for a minute and think about that, our constant comparison literally registers in our brain as physical pain. Imagine getting slapped every 5 seconds. The feeling of being less than isn't necessarily just an emotion. It's a psychological stress response. So when your relationship doesn't measure up to the grand escapades that they're on the perfect online social media platforms, your brain doesn't just think it's worse. In a very real way, it hurts. And we instinctively blame the relationship itself. If our love was real, it would look like that. We don't see the editing or the filters or the strategic silence about their problems. We can only see the final cut. And then we compare it to our own unraw footage. We'll take this distorted social media mirror and place it to the ultimate pressure cooker, the high school experience. Here, the stakes for social acceptance feel astronomically high, and the timeline is brutally short. And I don't think it just has to do with hormones, but about the microsociety with its own rigid rules. I've taken it upon myself to compile a timeline that most high schoolers feel that they have to follow by. On your freshman year, you must find your group and then get a crush. By your sophomore year, you should have had your first relationship or be entering your first relationship, and then you should be thinking about going to the dance. Your junior year, you should have a serious boyfriend or girlfriend, and then have a lot of posted photos on social media. And then by your senior year, you should be discussing plans after graduation, have your whole lives planned out, maybe even marriage. And then have a promposal worthy of a viral video. If this at all sounded stupid to you, that's because it is. This timeline creates a culture of I should. I should be in a relationship by now. I should have someone to go to prom with. And this external pressure completely overrides internal desire. You're no longer listening to your own heart to see if it's time to connect with someone. You're listening to this artificial social clock ticking, telling you it's time to partner up. And this leads directly to the checkbox relationship, where the primary function of a partner is to help you meet a social milestone, to prove to yourself and to the rest of your peers that you are normal and that you are desirable. And in the turbulent world of adolescence, identity is fragile. The question of who am I is a constant, unsettling undercurrent. A relationship offers a seemingly perfect solution, a prefabricated identity. Suddenly, you're not just you, you're Sarah's boyfriend or Jack's girlfriend. This external label provides a sense of stability and definition. It's a suit of armor against the terrifying question of solitude. But this is a trap. When you use your relationship as armor, it becomes a crutch. And if it ends, it doesn't just feel like a breakup, it feels like an amputation of yourself. Because you have attached so much of your identity to the role of being in a relationship. This fosters desperate clinginess, a fear of being alone that is so profound that it can make people stay in miserable, unhealthy, and simply fake relationships long after they've run their course, simply because being alone feels like external annihilation. The high school social world is a powerful echo chamber. Conversations, gossip, and social media feeds are all populated by the same small group of people, reinforcing the same values and pressures. In this environment, not having a partner can feel like some form of social exile. You're the third wheel or the one without a plus one, the one that always has to explain your singleness. This intense FOMO is not a trivial fear. It's a deep-seated fear that is so intense that if left unchecked, can have you excluded from the shared narrative of your peer group. This fear is a powerful motivator, and it will lead you to pursue connections not for you. Suddenly, you're not choosing a partner. Instead, you're choosing a ticket to re-entry, entry into the social group. And any relationship founded on fear rather than genuine affection is destined to feel hollow because at its core, it's a transaction and not a connection. Finally, we arrive at the final engine that systemizes all these dysfunctions, the dating app. The dating app is a pedagogical device that is actively teaching us new and deeply flawed philosophies of human connections. It's something I like to call the supermarket of souls. Dating apps present us with this marketplace, an interface that is designed for efficiency, browsing, and for comparison shopping. We are presented with a series of products, which we will name human beings, each with a thumbnail image, which we'll just call the packaging, and a short list of features. We'll call this one the bio. If you see where I'm getting at, it gets worse. This design trains our brains to engage in what psychologists call commodity fetishism. We start to value an abstract, marketable idea of a person, the fun-loving adventurer or the deep intellectual, over the complex, messy, uncategorizable human reality. Suddenly, you're not evaluating the whole person, you're evaluating their personal brand. This is a dehumanizing process for both the swiper and the swiped on. You reduce yourself to your most marketable attributes, and you reduce others to a set of disposable criteria. When you finally meet, You're not meeting a person, you're meeting your product. This is a recipe for a connection that feels commercial and profoundly fake. Psychologist Barry Schwartz's concept of the paradox of choice is perfectly illustrated by dating apps. We're presented with a limited number of options. We can make a choice and feel satisfied, but then we're suddenly presented with an infinite abundance. As dating apps promise, we become overwhelmed. And this abundance triggers a shift in psychology. We become maximizers, people who feel like we must find the best single product ever. This is an impossible task, of course, as we are all flawed. With every profile you see, the ghost of a potentially better, funnier, more attractive person is in the room with you. This creates a state of FOMO, that is, the grass is greener syndrome. You can never fully commit to the person you're with because you're haunted by the millions of other people you haven't met yet. You're always standing with one foot in the door and one foot out of it, always eyeing the app. And this mindset makes genuine, valuable connection impossible. How can you fully be present with someone when you're browsing the catalog for an upgrade? The greatest lesson dating apps teach is disposability. In the real world, navigating social friction is a skill. Learning to have an awkward conversation or to forgive a minor social misstep, to find common ground with someone who is different from you, builds a muscle that is not always worked on. Dating apps allow us to bypass this work entirely. A conversation gets too boring, you can just unmatch. Someone says something a little off, unmatch again. There's no cost and there's no need for grace or for patience, and especially not communication. We're trained to seek the path of least resistance, and the problem is, real long-term love is all about resistance. It's about working through the boring parts and the awkward parts and the difficult parts. By avoiding this friction on the apps, you're not finding the better partner, you're making yourselves completely unfit for any type of long-term relationship. When you start to treat people as disposable, your relationships, by their very nature, will start to feel temporary, shallow, and ultimately fake. And while all three of these engines create powerful self-reinforcing systems in our daily lives, their influence is cemented by the myths we consume for entertainment. The stories we tell ourselves about love are the blueprints we carry in our heads, and our modern blueprints have been radically redrawn. If we take a classic blueprint, say something like Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, the love story between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. It's not about love at first sight. In fact, it's a story about love despite the first sight. Their initial impressions are terrible. Darcy is proud and arrogant, and Elizabeth is prejudiced and quick to judge. The entire novel is the process of them deconstructing their own flaws through a series of painful, honest, and deeply necessary conversation. The climax isn't a grand gesture. It's a letter, and then a conversation. Love is built in the space between words. It's architectural. It's slow and intentional, built on a foundation of mutual trust that is earned and not magically bestowed. This model of love is fundamentally about a person's character. It suggests that the purpose of a relationship is to make you a better person, to sand down your rough edges, to challenge your prejudices, to call you out on your pride. The focus is on the internal journey of two people growing together. If you contrast this with the blueprints offered by much of our modern-day romance, from the books of Colleen Hoover or the tropes stimulating around book talk, you start to see where everything is falling apart. In these types of books, love is often instantaneous and all-consuming, faded even. It's less about building and more about preordained connection. The conflict is often external, a traumatic past or a dangerous world, a supernatural bond, rather than the internal flaws of the characters. The focus is on the intensity of the feelings and the overwhelming passion, and the drama of the connection. I believe this model of love is fundamentally about sensation. It suggests that the purpose of a relationship is to make you feel intensely, to be consumed or obsessed over, to be saved, and the slow burn is often compressed or bypassed for that lightning strike. When our primary blueprint for love is this systemic model, we enter our real-life relationships with a set of disastrous expectations. When you start to contrast the two, you can often see the differences. In a systemic expectation, you get things like constant butterflies, overwhelming passions, or little to no doubts. And often, there's a dramatic reconciliation. However, in the architectural reality, you get things more like comfortable silence, working through doubts with conversation, shared chores, and quiet companionship. It's like people expect love to be a constant high. When the initial spark fades, as it does in all relationships, we don't see it as a natural transition into a deeper, more stable phase of love. We usually end up seeing it as a sign that love is dying, or that we've chosen the wrong person. We're so busy searching for the drama of that systemic event that we lose sight of the profound beauty of the architectural process. We dismiss the quiet daily acts of love, like the made cups of coffee, the listened to rant, or the forgiven mistake, because they don't really match the intense dramatic feeling told to us by our stories. We're quite literally choosing the wrong blueprint and then wondering why our houses we've built feel unstable. So now that I've made all of Book Talk single-handedly mad at me, is there any solution for this? And to the one person that asked that question, I'll say yes. It requires a fundamental identity shift from being the consumer of love to being an architect of it. And the very first and most important structure you'll ever build is yourself. The first step is to conduct a deep archaeological dig on your own self. This goes far beyond a list of hobbies. You have to ask yourself the hard questions. What are my core values? What are my attachment patterns? What are my non-negotiable boundaries? What are my triggers and what are my traumas? And who am I when I'm completely alone? This process is essential. It's the work of creating your own blueprint so you don't have to borrow a broken one from somebody else. When you know your own blueprint, you stop trying to force fit yourself into relationships that are the wrong shape for you. Having self-love is meaningless if you treat it as just a feeling. It must be enacted and built through action and self-resilience. This means you have to build a life that you genuinely enjoy living by yourself. It means learning to comfort yourself when you're sad, to motivate yourself when you're lazy, to solve your own problems and generate your own joy. It means creating your own source of security. And a partner should be a force multiplier for your already happy life, not the primary source of it. So when you're self-reliant, you enter relationships from a place of abundance and generosity, not just a lack of neediness. In this case, you're choosing someone, not needing to be with them. And this is the single most important factor in ensuring that a relationship is genuine and not transactional. By becoming the architect of your own self, you dismantle the three engines of distortion. You no longer need the performance because you have your own internal validation. You no longer feel the pressure because your worth is not determined by your relationship status. You're no longer trapped by the paradox of choice because you know exactly what you're looking for, and you'd rather be alone than with the wrong person. So to all of the people watching that are still single this Valentine's Day, rejoice and start working on yourself a little bit before you put yourself out there again. You've been given a map that's leading you in the wrong places. You need to learn to throw that map away and start navigating via your own navigation compass. This will not be a quick fix. It's often a work of a lifetime, but it's the only work that leads to a love that is not a performance for an audience, but a love language between two whole people. A love that is not consumed, but co-created. A love that doesn't just feel real, but is real.